Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, in the wake of the Pahalgam killings in Kashmir, high-profile figures are now claiming it was indeed an Indian intelligence false flag operation. We take a look at those accusations. As election fever finally dies down, we examine the way forward for the nation of Canada with no majority government again. And in India, as their accusations hit the headlines of Pakistan supporting terrorism, right-wing social media is now filling up with extremists demanding Jagmeet Singh is murdered by Indian intelligence. Well, as a result, we weigh up the evidence then of just which government is the actual terrorist here. And we continue our look at evidence of how India is the likely source of the FBI labelling a known Bishnoi gang member as a Khalistani. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our amazing audience out there. Thanks for joining us once again. And don't forget, we're still waiting on you to press that like, subscribe, and share it with your friends so we can get our subscribers up even higher to boost us in the algorithms. It really helps, and we appreciate it. Other than that, Angus, back to you over in London.
We certainly do appreciate it, and James and I together will be bringing you our daily perspectives on the news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments which have been filling up below the videos at the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, lots to get through as always today. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We're going to start with a look back at, again, Operation Broken Sword. Now, today I'm going to show you a clip of the press release. Now, it was actually about a 20-minute press release that was done by the different law enforcement agencies in California that were involved. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I will show you the district attorney's part and the intro because it gives a very good background and a summary of what Operation Broken Sword was. Now, this week I've been talking about that and the links to the FBI false accusations of individuals being labeled as Khalistani. So again, tomorrow night I'm going to wrap that all together and actually show you why these two incidents are very significant when it comes to the false labeling of people as Khalistani in the current context, but also how it ties into events such as Operation Broken Sword in Sacramento and other parts of California. So again, it really goes to show how there is very likely the involvement of the India government, RAW and RSS when it comes to the FBI recently labeling individuals being arrested as Khalistani. So again, it's a whole circle that we've come through this week to bring it all together in tomorrow's show. But let's take a peek at that at the press conference that was held. Now, this is back in 2023, but again, tomorrow you'll understand the whole significance of why it's coming up now and how it all ties into what the current situation is and the false labeling of certain gangsters and potentially terrorists that have been arrested, and they again are being falsely accused publicly as being pro-Khalistani, which is not the case at all, and it is just another part of the media machine coming out of India. So again, we'll wrap it all together tomorrow night, but let's take a look at this.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Dupre, the District Attorney of Sutter County. For the past several years, the peaceful Sikh community has been plagued with acts of violence committed by two warring criminal syndicates. These acts of violence began with fistfights and sword attacks at the Sikh parade in Yuba City in 2018 and have escalated to shooting, beginning with the shooting at a wedding party in September of 2021 here in Yuba City. Since then, these syndicates have been involved in an additional 10 shootings, and 11 men total have been shot. These shootings include the 5 men shot outside the Sikh temple in Stockton in August of 2022, as well as the 2 men shot at the Sacramento Sikh parade on March 26th of this year. The initial acts of violence led to the investigation of the criminal syndicates by the Yuba Sutter Narcotics and Gang Enforcement Task Force, known as Net 5, and the investigation became known as Operation Broken Sword, based on one of the sword attacks in 2018, in which the suspect's attack was so violent that the sword broke. Yesterday, Sunday, April 16th, 2023, with the help of the Department of Justice, the FBI, the DEA, Homeland Security Investigations, CHP Special Operations Unit, and local law enforcement agencies from each jurisdiction, as well as the district attorney's offices in Sutter, San Joaquin, Sacramento, and Yolo counties, along with their district attorney investigators, 20 search warrants were served. The results of these search warrants were 17 arrests, 5 outstanding arrest warrants, and overall during the investigation, 41 firearms were seized. Those firearms include AR-15s, AK-47s, handguns, and at least 1 machine gun. The diagram up on the screen shows which men were arrested for which crimes and where. So far we have 2 arrested for the attempted murder at the wedding party here in Yuba City in September of 2021, and 1 for possession of child pornography and possession of an assault weapon. 5 men were arrested for attempted murder and conspiracy regarding a shooting that occurred in Woodland in December of 2022, and that's the top right. Notably, the 2 top men who have yellow marks next to their names are fugitives wanted for murder in India. They are currently being held without bail. The lower left box labeled San Joaquin shows 2 men and some firearms. They were stopped on their way to Manteca. As a result of our investigation, they were on their way to Manteca to commit a homicide. And those are the 3 firearms that were seized in that, and that did include a fully automatic weapon, which is under the law a machine gun. The Sacramento box shows the men arrested in connection with the Sacramento Sikh Temple parade shooting that occurred in March. Law enforcement was able to stop 2 vehicles prior to them arriving at the parade and arrested 7 men at that time. In their vehicles were 4 handguns and 2 assault weapons with large capacity magazines. While a shooting did occur at the temple, we were able to stop a mass casualty incident. If those weapons had gotten into the parade, it could have been a bloodbath. This operation shows not just Sutter County's commitment to keeping Sikh celebrations and the Sikh community safe, but those celebrations and Sikh communities throughout Northern California, not just here in Sutter County.
There we go. We'll try that again. I forgot to unmute myself. So in any event, it shows that the level of gang activity there was quite substantial when they bring in local law enforcement, state law enforcement, the DEA, the FBI, Homeland Security, and other law enforcement agencies really shows. I believe it was 400 to 500 officers that were involved in this whole operation. Now, there were several individuals who were labeled as murderers who were wanted out of India. And again, it just is a question about whether or not that is credible claims from India, or if they are, just in opposition to the current government, because we know that that is one way that India does take out their opposition or those who dissent against them, and that is falsely labeling them. But again, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that these individuals in California were actually wanted for murder in India as well. Now, these cases are still playing out throughout the U.S. courts, but for the local community there in Stockton and the other counties and cities involved, this is still a very memorable event, and it really works to miscategorize the Sikh people and the entire community. And it also gives a false narrative on the Khalistan movement, because when you have the current FBI coming out and really labeling in the same area geographically, falsely labeling people who are being arrested as Khalistani, it really reiterates a fear within the community and a separation. And tomorrow we're going to take a look at why it is very likely that this labeling is actually not at the behest of higher levels of FBI, but instead coming directly from India, from the RSS, from the NIA or NAI, and other organizations there. And we'll see that tomorrow night with a direct link there, and why I feel that it is so important that this information be out, that they are being miscategorized, but also that the FBI take a step back and realize the damage that they can be doing to a community by giving false labels and false names to people and misidentifying them as being a part of a certain group when they are clearly not. And again, with this operation, they were very clear that the Gurdwara was being targeted. Sikhs of normal everyday life were being targeted by these gangsters. And that is something that we see quite often with the Bishnoi gang as well, coming out of India, but with their international reach, using these groups such as these two warring factions that they utilize to focus in on the diaspora and actually use that for extortion, bribery, blackmail, all kinds of different crimes to extort money out of that diaspora and that community. And India, again, their ultimate goal is to try to create a division within communities, whether that be between your traditional everyday Hindus and the Sikhs and the Muslims, trying to create that division, that hate, that anger, that misdirection, the misinformation, and trying to get the rest of America to focus in and also create a division and mistrust and an anger towards them. And that, let's remember, my friends, is the goal of India is to really undermine the democratic process and the rights of all to have that Khalistan referendum that is being held around the world. The next one, I believe, is Washington, D.C. But again, it is all about India trying to further their narrative, their falsehoods, and to miscategorize people as terrorists in order to get foreign governments to do their bidding on their behalf. Angus, I'll kick it on back to you in the studio in London.
Yeah, James, it's a real source of frustration, I suppose, for many Western countries, and the UK is no exception to this, that India has tended to export its gang violence to the diaspora, and it has become an increasing problem. Here in the UK, it's primarily we have other gang problems from Albania and certain East European countries, and the Indian gang violence is not quite as excessive here as it clearly is in Canada and North America. However, yeah, it is a slight embarrassment, I would say, for Narendra Modi. Now, of course, there is gang violence that exists all over the world, and sadly, the Sikh community is probably no exception to that. There are bad elements. We cannot deny that, as we said yesterday, and we talked about human nature. Unfortunately, there are always going to be bad apples. It's just a fact of life, a fact of nature. What really matters is how, of course, each community in its turn deals with its own bad apples within its own community. And I have no doubt the Sikh community does its absolute utmost to use the philosophy and the heritage and the whole social structure of the Gurdwaras and Sikhi to try and bring its bad apples back into, shall we say, slightly better behaviour. But anyway, that's a different story. But ultimately, yes, there clearly is an issue here of gang warfare that has raised its head so significantly that it's had to involve so many layers of law enforcement to such an extent. However, the key here, I think, for us is, as you rightly say, James, it's the PR exercise on behalf of Narendra Modi's government. It is very embarrassing for India and the Indian government to have the finger of suspicion and the finger of accusations pointed at the government, saying, look, you are exporting your violence through your diasporas into our countries. Firstly, what are you doing about it? And secondly, why should we have to put up with it? So, of course, it does feed into the whole Trump philosophy. So we don't need these people in our communities. So again, it's not good, shall we say, for community relationships all around the world, never mind locally in these various countries. But ultimately, yes, there is an opportunity here for Narendra Modi, and this, I think, is the key here, is that Modi is jumping on an opportunity. He's spinning a bad situation into a good situation, politically speaking, for himself, because he is doing his absolute utmost to mobilise his propaganda forces to say, okay, these criminals, well, okay, we have to admit maybe they're Indians, but the Khalistanis. Let's spin this into something that works in my favour. Let's claim the Khalistanis, and suddenly we've got this grey area of these criminals who suddenly become, at least in the mainstream media where the India control the narrative, they're all Khalistani criminals, and suddenly you see how the perspective on the story changes completely. It's not Indian gang warfare, it's these wretched Khalistani terrorists again. You see how that narrative suddenly changes perspective, and it changes the whole look of the story. So James, yes, I think this is something that needs to be really pushed back on, and really it's all about taking back control of the narrative and highlighting it for what it is. It is just simply criminality being exported from India, and Modi's BJP government are doing their best to try and turn it against the peaceful democratic Khalistan movement, because they are losing that battle, James.
Absolutely. And that's something that, for our viewers, especially for those who are watching and learning with us on this journey into Sikhi and the Khalistan movement and so forth. But those who are not of Sikh heritage, it's really important that you speak out in your community as well, so that they understand that this is not accurate reporting and accurate labeling by the FBI. So again, the more that the Western world and the broader population understands this, then the more supportive we can be as a cooperative to support the Sikh community, the democratic right of the Khalistan movement, and to make sure that we hold those in law enforcement and politics responsible for the miscategorization and the false labeling of individuals. So again, we'll tie it all together tomorrow night with a pretty little bow, so they say, and we'll take a look at how this is probably a big connection to the India government, Angus. We'll see that tomorrow night. But as we talk about politics, big changes on the horizon in Canada as we see the election is finally done, and we have a turning point for Canadian politics. Possibly, or it may be the same old, but at this time, the Liberals have won their fourth consecutive term in office to lead the nation. Now, once again, it is a minority government, and already we are seeing the likes of some conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, demanding another election, that they want to already hold a new general election because there's no majority government, and they feel that it is going to be just a revolving door of policies that are not being passed because of the blockade. Instead, what I personally would love to see is for the politicians to take their head out of the sand, actually come together on the issues of significance to Canadians. And a big part of that during the campaign by all sides, of course, was the trade war with the United States, as well as the war in Ukraine and potential peace opportunities between them and Russia that seem to be further and further away today than they were weeks ago. And then, of course, we see things in Gaza and Israel. But also, of course, we need to address the transnational repression and the foreign interference here in Canada. So these are very important issues that we need to see come to fruition in terms of solutions that are long-term and that are impactful, and we need to see that start. Again, is that going to be stemming by the minority government? Well, we'll have to see, because I also feel that in the whole letting the dust settle, when you have the 167 seats that the Liberals won, they are just shy of the 172 that are needed for a majority government. Are they going to partner up with the Bloc Québécois? Are they going to, it really depends on the outcome over the next several weeks as to what's going to happen, where the parties are going to turn. And that, again, it may be just enough for the NDP to jump in again and have some type of agreement with the Liberals and move forward as they did in the previous administration. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how that works. Now, of course, the big talk is the tariffs and the economic impacts on Canadians and the global economy. Now, Canada represents manufacturing of, for example, motor vehicles that are on again, off again, up, down, all over the place in terms of tariffs. But that supports over 138,000 jobs from coast to coast here in Canada, mostly in the east, Ontario and Quebec, for example. But again, these units go back and forth across the border so many times that they may be subjected to multiple tariff charges. And that is a tough one for Canada. And it's going to be tough for North America because Mexico is also involved in the supply chain process and the manufacturing. So it's a trilateral partnership for these vehicles that are labeled as made in America or American, American vehicles. So again, it really makes a difference. Now, one of the other things that Carney has promised coming into the election was to really expedite the manufacturing of another wave of housing, including immediate starts on up to 100,000 homes, which is something that we are in need of in Canada. And this also has had a direct impact on students and foreign workers coming in from India and other countries around the world. We've had a shortage of housing, whether it is the students coming in, the temporary foreign workers, the skilled workers. Again, when they arrive and the pricing of the homes is so exponentially high, it really restricts them and makes it difficult to attract those people to come to Canada because of the cost of living just skyrocketing. But it also is availability. So even if they have the ability to pay for the housing, there's a lack of supply. And of course, that has a direct impact. Again, it's a vicious cycle because it pushes the cost of homes up, whether it's short-term rentals, long-term rentals, purchases, and so forth. So again, it makes it difficult for everybody all the way around. And as that gets more difficult for our foreign workers and students and so forth, it drives prices again up for residents of Canada, whether it's permanent residents, temporary, and so forth. So again, it is tough. Now, whether or not there's going to be a realignment of the political sphere, we'll see. Once again, Jagmeet Singh did retire from the leadership role of the NDP, or the New Democrat Party, and that was because he lost his seat in the election, or the electoral district, as we refer to it. But of course, Pierre Poilievre also did, but he is not graciously going off into the night, as they say. He is instead steadfast on maintaining his leadership role within the Conservative Party, and he is probably going to be really pushing for that non-confidence vote to remove the Liberals and call for another general election at great expense and stress to Canadian citizens. Now is a time that we need to be focused on the future of Canada, and whether that is the increased trade deals with Europe, with the UK, with China, Japan, the US, doesn't matter. We need a clear path forward, and to really throw the uncertainty of a potential another election is really not in the best interests of Canadians in any way, shape, or form, Angus. So again, it is a new dawn for Canada, but whether it's just going to be a new dawn on Groundhog Day, like the movie with Bill Murray, where it's the same thing every day going forward, we'll have to see how this plays out, Angus.
Oh, yes. I think it's very unlikely there will be another general election. But can you think of having to go through all this again for another general election? But sadly, it's most unlikely. It just ain't going to happen. It's a case of being a bit of a sore loser. And ironically, he needs to be careful what he wishes for, does Mr. Poilievre, because you can never predict these things, and you can never predict human nature. You can to some degree, but it always has a nasty habit of giving you a sharp slap in the face and proving your predictions wrong. Because who knows what could happen in a new election? He could suddenly find himself, the Conservative Party, actually losing massively, because people may react saying, no, we don't like sore losers. So suddenly the Liberals may end up with a massive majority. Jagmeet Singh, I have no doubt, will be pushing for a new election for obvious reasons. There is a chance that he may sneak back in again, which would be no bad thing. But ultimately, I think this is just a theoretical exercise, and it ain't going to happen, because for every every reason, not least that there is a government that has been formed, and albeit a minority government, and just the sheer resources, expense, everything that is involved in setting up another election, it just ain't going to happen. So I think he can wish for all he wants, but one does silently wish that there would be another one, just to maybe perhaps teach him a lesson if it doesn't quite go his way as he expects. But anyway, that's another thing. Yes, we're back. We're back with minority government, and unfortunately for the NDP and really for the Sikh community, is that they did lose so many seats. I think 17 seats in total. I think they only ended up with 7 seats. So they are a much less powerful force than they were in that last supply agreement that they had with the Liberals this time round. However, minority governments do tend to need to tie up agreements, even these sort of backroom deals and these sort of loose coalitions with minority parties, whether it is the Quebec, I can't even pronounce the word, Quebecois party, or whether it's the Greens or indeed the NDP. But the Liberals are indeed going to have to tie up some sort of deals behind the scenes with these parties if they're going to push their issues through. And as I said yesterday, the one advantage then for the NDP, and almost by extension the Sikh community, who I feel would be well represented by the NDP, is that the issues very relevant to those parties then do come from the back seat to the front seat again, because of course the Liberals will have to pay some sort of service in return for the support of the minority parties like the NDP. So coalitions, they never really work well at the end of the day. It is always better for a country to have a clear majority government. The one exception in my personal opinion is the Labour government here in the UK, but that's another story. But ultimately coalitions, and Europe has suffered from coalition governments for many, many years, and it does create a bit of a stalemate. It's very slow. It means decision making is always very slow, and it always ends up as a bit of a mush of policies. There's never any clear direction, left or right, socialism, capitalism. It just always ends up in a bit of a mushy mess of policies, and countries tend to lose their way a little bit when they suffer from coalition governments. And sadly for Canada, they do have a minority government, but I think it's going to be an issue by issue basis. Depending on the issue is depending which minority party will support the minority government. If it's an environmental issue, of course the Greens are going to support it. If it happens to be more socialist issues and ideological issues, then it's likely the NDP will then in turn support the Liberals. So it's a bit of a political mess, James. We don't like situations like this. It's never really good for a nation. However, we'll see, James. And as for the Sikh community, as I said yesterday, it's not really the best result. It's not great news, but we'll see. We'll see, James. We'll see which direction it all goes in.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's not forget that the NDP were able to very effectively maneuver and leverage the Liberals in the last round, because they used it to push forward their agenda to get the pharmacare program, so life-saving and preserving medications covered by the government medical program for those who are of lower income, as well as the dental program. So the NDP were very smart, and that's where Jagmeet Singh was very wise, because he was able to leverage that power into actual policy, which was important for him. And just on a lighter closing topic, there are just all these different parties in Canada that you've probably never even heard of. And there's one called the Animal Protection Party, which I'm surprised that they even got a couple thousand votes. But I think it might be led by, maybe Garfield and Snoopy or something. I don't know. But the other one that I found hilarious was the Marijuana Party. Only got about 127 votes, and I'm guessing that they were too stoned to get off the couch to get out to the polls and vote, Angus. But the Marijuana Party only got 127 votes. So let me tell you, maybe next time bribe them with Twinkies at the polling station.
Well, going forward, the joys of democracy, but at least it does mean that Canada clearly is not interested in going down that road, which is no bad thing. So well done.
Exactly. But I thought we'd just throw a little lighter chuckle in there for our viewers.
Indeed. And so the joys of democracy, one of our minority parties, which always garners thousands of votes, is the monster raving loony party, which is come to be a bit of a tradition here in the UK. But anyway, on that note, James, let's move forward on to my first story. And the serious story of the killings in Pahalgam. And the fallout, again, of this killing, this mass killing, has been enormous, of course, in terms of relations between India and Pakistan. And the tensions are mounting up. The two sides are taking pot shots at each other across the line of control. Apparently, there is various army assets being mobilised near the various borders and particularly the lines of control. So it is quite concerning. And a post has been issued, certainly from the Khalistan side, just saying, okay, let's we know who the real enemy is here, and they're calling, certainly here in the UK, for people to take to the streets and, in fact, to collect outside India's High Commission in London tomorrow, May the 1st, at 1 p.m. And certainly there is this big move to say we know who the bad guy is in this situation, and we believe it's Narendra Modi. And of course, then the posters are encouraging people to take to the streets and protest outside India's High Commission, primarily because they believe, and there is a growing movement amongst the various diaspora communities, and probably inside India, that there is a belief that this operation that killed up to 26 people, Hindus sadly, who were shot by these gunmen, there is a belief that it was a false flag operation. And you only need to look at the flavour of many of our commenters in our comments column who feel basically the same thing. We've often talked about the Chittagong Singh Pura massacre, in which 36 Sikhs were murdered in the early 2000s prior to a Bill Clinton visit. And a whistleblower has allegedly since then come out in the US, an Indian officer, an ex-Indian officer from the Indian Army, who said actually yes, it was the Indian Army under instructions to instigate this terrible massacre, essentially to highlight the problem, ironically, of Islamic terrorism, and yet the terrorism was actually perpetrated by India itself. So there is now, after of course this situation in Pahalgam, many people, and many high-profile people, are now actually taking to the media, primarily social media, but it's increasingly across mainstream media, that they're accusing the Indian government of being behind this massacre. And unsurprisingly, Gurpratap Singh Pannoon has been on his platform, as he always does in his own inimitable way, and he actually himself has claimed no way that was this Islamic terrorism. It was clearly a false flag operation by India. And it's interesting because the lines are really being drawn here between Pakistan and India, and unsurprisingly, the Khalistan movement is actually coming out quite openly and saying, look, no, we support Pakistan in this I was going to say discussion, there's a euphemism, in this conflict or potential conflict between India and Pakistan. Right. And as sides are being drawn, it is very clear where the Khalistan movement's sympathies lie, and clearly they are openly saying that there's no way we should be supporting India in this problem, and actually we should lend our weight to Pakistan because they feel that they are the wronged party in this. And Gurpratap Singh Pannoon has said, and he's called upon the Sikh community within India itself, and particularly those in the armed forces in India, do not take up arms on behalf of India. Don't fight what he calls India's jingoistic war against Pakistan. And he actually believes it is India deliberately provoking Pakistan. And he's saying that Pakistan is a friendly country to the Sikh community and has always supported Khalistan. And again, we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about this whole, is Pakistan to do or aligned with the Khalistan movement. However, interestingly, Gurpratap Singh Pannoon claims that he has actually obtained intelligence from behind the scenes, and we do know he is very well connected behind the scenes, and he is claiming that there was another massacre planned at Chanapura. in Srinagar that was originally planned, and instead it was changed to this massacre that occurred in Pahalgam instead. And he claims he has obtained what he says is verified intelligence, revealing it was Modi's government had originally planned a Sikh massacre at Chanapura during Khalsa Sajna Dihara Nagar Kirtan on April the 13th. So it is very specific, this intelligence. And it was to deliberately, the aim of this was to isolate the Pakistan government ahead of Vice President Vance's visit to India. And of course, this mirrors what happened with the Chiting Singh Pura massacre that was aimed for exactly the same reason, to put the US administration in opposition to Pakistan, to highlight that Pakistan was a supporter of terrorism, and that coincided with a visit of Bill Clinton. So Panoon claims that the Chanapura massacre was actually planned but then aborted because the Research and Analysis Wing of India's intelligence service, advised the government, saying if you do this during Khalsa Sajna Dihara, it could lead firstly to the cancellation of Vance's visit to India, because the US would deem it too controversial to attend India. And secondly, if you go around massacring Sikhs yet again, all you're doing is it is increasing support yet more for the Khalistan referendum that is unfolding globally. So in other words, the backlash would actually serve against the Modi agenda to try and bury the pro-Khalistan movement. And of course, the Chanapura massacre wouldn't actually serve Modi's optics very well. And as a result of that, the planned massacre against Sikhs in Srinagar was then withdrawn. It was cancelled and instead replaced with the Pahalgam Hindu massacre. And of course, it was Hindus, sadly, who were primarily murdered in that killing. And of course, murdering Hindus also does serve, particularly as a false flag operation, it does serve the agenda very well, saying, now, we can't deny that Islamic terrorism does exist. It does exist, sadly, all over the world. However, was this particular killing perpetrated by Islamic terrorists? That is the big question. But Panoon is very clear, as indeed many other people are. And in fact, I'll point you to my podcast at the end of this week where we will be discussing this. And my guest, Dr. Grewal, is himself very clear that he believes it was no doubt a false flag operation by RAW for, again, this very same reason. And Panoon and others, including Dr. Grewal, believe, of course, once again, it's the National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, who's probably behind, who was the let's call it the mastermind behind this operation, to deliberately, first of all, blame and label Kashmiri fighters as terrorists, because, of course, there is this ongoing issue of Kashmir and trying to get control of Kashmir, and anything that goes wrong is immediately labelled as Kashmiri terrorists. And it was also designed to isolate Pakistan as, quote, a state sponsor of terrorism. Unsurprisingly, of course, and again, this has come into play on several occasions, there is an election coming up in Bihar. And Modi is fighting very hard on behalf of the BJP in this upcoming election in Bihar. And of course, if you get an incident in Kashmir, blame it on these terrorists. It's going to help his election campaigning. Being a strong leader, it's going to help his election campaigning in Bihar. And of course, once again, it manufactures a Hindu nationalist narrative. Again, it's the poor Hindu victims. Therefore, it's been perpetrated by Islam, by Muslims. We need to push these Muslims out of our Hindu Rashtra. So again, all the elements, again, point to the fact that it is likely a false flag operation. Now, Modi has recently been in Saudi Arabia, but when he returned, just at the time of this massacre, did he go to Pahalgam to pay his respects? No, he didn't. Did he attend any of the funeral services of the Hindu victims? No, of course, he did not. He was noticeable in his absence. On that day of the funerals, where was Prime Minister Modi? He was actually in Bihar attending an election rally. Again, what does that say? Even if this wasn't a false flag, it doesn't say very much for Narendra Modi if he can't even be bothered to turn up to the funerals or even pay tribute to his own Hindu nationals who were murdered in that terrible massacre. Did he attend the same issues in Manipur when many were murdered in Manipur? No, he didn't. It took him months, if you recall, to even mention the Manipur massacres that were going on there. Same scenario, sadly. So The Pahalgam Hindu massacre, according to Panoon at least, and of course many commenters, is that it is part of an election strategy and, in Panoon's words, written in blood by the BJP. And again, once again, he's very clear. He said, look, it's BJP Modi's India is producing and exporting transnational terror to sustain the Hindutva election. The Hindutva agenda. So, Panoon has released a series of videos about this whole topic, and he does, of course, refer, unsurprisingly, to the Chittagong Singh Pura massacre of Sikhs back in 2000, which again coincided with Clinton, and again it was planned by Raw, he claims. Again, it was then executed under Ajit Doval's watch, and it was, he claims, approved by Modi and, of course, his Gujarati mate, the Home Minister Amit Shah. And of course, in cahoots with all of that is the External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar, who gave them diplomatic shielding under it. And again, he claims it was for the very clear agenda to influence US foreign policy against the Kashmir freedom movement. It also justified a new wave of extrajudicial killings, and it does create fear amongst his Hindu voters, which in turn rallies support for the BJP. And it does discredit legitimate freedom movements by labelling them as terrorists. And again, read that as Khalistan is as well. So, James, it's very clear amongst many commenters, certainly from the Sikh community and the Khalistan movement, who was behind this killing. It wasn't, they claim, Islamic terrorism. It was, in fact, very likely a false flag by the Indian government and Indian intelligence services, primarily because they have a track record in doing this. They've done this before. We've talked a lot about it, have we not, James?
Absolutely. And let's take a look at the obvious part of it, is that when they are setting up and staging the visits of foreign leaders, in particular for this pattern, as we'll call it, they know that the international media is even more focused on them. They are targeted on India. So when the government or other agencies acting on their behest allegedly or possibly were involved in something like this, they know that they are going to create an outcry by the international community, and they are focusing the attention on others away from themselves to justify what they are doing to minorities, to different groups, and within the borders of their own country, but also what they are trying to project in terms of the threats from Pakistan. So again, it is something that we've seen over and over again, Angus, where the government there is utilizing these high visual and high pressure events to be able to advance their own agenda.
Absolutely. And the big question that you have to ask in this situation is who actually benefits from the Pahalgam terror attack? Well, arguably, it's not the independence of Kashmir. It's not the Kashmiris. The Kashmiris don't benefit from this. Quite the opposite. The only person who actually does benefit, or the only body that benefits, is the BJP-led Indian government. So, it's very clear based on just the theoretical evidence of who's behind it. So, anyway, but on that note, as a result, again, as I say, the fallout has been pretty massive on this. And the India's deputy envoy to the United Nations, a lady called Yojana Patel, was very vocal recently in the UN. And let me just play you her words of what she accused Pakistan of.
Thank you, Madam. It is unfortunate that one particular delegation has chosen to misuse and undermine this forum to indulge in propaganda and make baseless allegations against India. The whole world has heard Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif admitting and confessing Pakistan's history of supporting, training, and funding terrorist organizations in a recent television interview. This open confession surprises no one and exposes Pakistan as a rogue state fueling global terrorism and destabilizing the region. The world can no longer turn a blind eye. I have nothing further to add.
So pretty strong words from the Deputy Envoy of India against Pakistan, accusing them of being a rogue state who promotes international terrorism. Well, that's interesting coming from India. Let's look at some evidence then. I mean, firstly, not least recently, there was a BJP candidate who publicly put a bounty of $250,000 on for the head, literally, for the head of Gurpratap Singh Pannoon. He was encouraging people to behead Gurpratap Singh Pannoon. And yesterday, as part of all the fallout on social media, another very high-profile individual, Mr. Sinha. This is a Twitter, an X account that is a Hindutva account, and this guy is very, very well followed. He's got millions of followers, and he's always promoting Hindutva propaganda. His post yesterday said, "Meet Jagmeet Singh." He wanted to cut Punjab off from India while sitting in Canada. He lost his own constituency, and of course the Hindutva social media are gloating over Jagmeet Singh losing his seat. Now, how about this? He didn't just lose the election, he came in third. Now he will have to face unknown gunmen as well. Now, there is a very powerful statement. It's a very innocuous statement, but in reality, for those who know, Indian social media, and particularly Hindutva media, refers to Indian operative assassins, in other words, assassins of the Indian intelligence agencies. They refer to them as unknown gunmen, because in the media they are often referred to as unknown gunmen, but in reality they are gunmen, the assassins sent on behalf of the Indian government, and it is these sorts of unknown gunmen that killed Nijar, amongst many others. So what this guy, Mr. Sinha, is saying is, yeah, it's about time that Jagmeet Singh faced these Indian government assassins. Essentially, it is a call for Jagmeet Singh to be assassinated by the Indian government. What does that say? And unsurprisingly, behind that post and across Hindutva social media, yes, there are loads of supporting comments manifesting unknown gunman reaches him soon. These are people publicly, and actually these accounts are ladies, these are women on the face of it. Maybe they're not, but who knows? But this is now people in India calling for the head of Jagmeet Singh. So again, one has to say, who actually is promoting terrorism here? Who is actually promoting breaking the rule of law? And I just have to just put in here, I was delighted to see that there was one lone voice on that social media account who put in this post, Maddie, whoever Maddie is. Elections always have winners and losers, nothing new. What's new is that Khalistan will soon rise as an independent nation. So well done to Maddie for wading into the lion's den there, into that bed of Hindutva activists and campaigners for at least promoting the Khalistan cause. But ultimately, more seriously, when it comes to these India throwing out these accusations at the United Nations against Pakistan. Now, yes, Pakistan is guilty to some degree of promoting terrorism. There is definitely an Islamic extremist element that does reside within Pakistan. It is a problem, not just for the world, but actually for Pakistan itself. And we do know that the Pakistan government is trying its damnedest to try and suppress and keep under control this Islamic extremist element that does reside within Pakistan, and certainly over the border in Afghanistan as well. So we can't deny that exists. However, that does not mean that India is not innocent in this. Let's look at the evidence. We have, for example, the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, which has been blamed on India, on the Indian government. We have the Pannoon assassination plot now going through the court of law, where US law enforcement caught red-handed assassins on behalf of allegedly the Indian government. Certainly Nikhil Gupta, an Indian national, has been indicted. Vikram Yadav has been indicted. And this leads up to Samant Gol and even all the way up to Ajit Doval. Yes, the India's national security advisor has been named in US law enforcement in this terrorist activity, planning the assassination of a US individual. We have the suspicious death of Avtar Singh Kandar here in the UK, which in turn, a Khalistan campaigner, has been blamed on the door of India, of the Indian government. We have threat to life warnings issued by the intelligence services to Khalistan political campaigners in the UK, in Canada, in the United States, in Australia. These threat to life warnings, although officially cannot name India, they know, the individuals know, that their lives are in danger from the Indian government, from assassins sent out by the Indian government. We do know that at least 20 international assassinations of Khalistan campaigners have been instigated by India, including in Pakistan and other countries. We do know transnational repression is an ongoing issue has been recognised officially by at least the Canadian government and the United States government. So we do know this, again, that it lands at the door of the Indian government. We do know that the Bishnoi gang is being used as proxy killers by the Indian government. And of course, we have that BJP candidate putting a bounty on Panoon's head. And we do know, of course, as I've just said, that social media is full of death threats, referring to these unknown gunmen. Of course, these are the gunmen, the assassins of the Indian government. So, James, let me ask a rhetorical question. Which government here is the terrorist government? Which government here is a rogue government running out of control? Which government, therefore, based on the actual evidence, is a government that promotes international terrorism, James?
Absolutely, and I mean, let's face it. We've seen the government of India involved in other assassinations here in Canada, and let me tell you, even though Jagmeet Singh has been ousted essentially from his position, Canadians will still stand firm and stand behind him. And let me tell you, if India thinks that they can come in and try to harm him or his family, believe me, Canadians are not going to sit idly by and remain silent. They will rise up and be pissed because, let's face it, Jagmeet Singh has done a hell of a lot for the country of Canada, for Canadians overall. Whether or not he's still in politics is totally irrelevant. What he has accomplished is something to be proud of and something that Canadians are proud of him for doing. And, as they say, politics is an ugly game. But let me tell you, at the end of the day, Canadians of all cultures, of all backgrounds, will come together and demand some very serious consequences if there's any harm that comes to Jagmeet Singh. But again, we know that the India government is not above reproach on something like this because they've got a history that's very well proven.
Indeed, and one hopes that those threats against Jagmeet Singh are indeed just social media keyboard warriors, which in likelihood they certainly are. But ultimately, More seriously, there is no doubt that the Indian government is not behaving as a national government should, particularly if it is aspiring to be a future superpower. So anyway, let's move on, James, as the clock counts down as always to our comments column, and loads of wonderful comments. Thank you to our wonderful audience for all your contributions. And we'll start off with one of our regular critics. It's Nirbang, who says Khalistan is a Pakistani project from day one. Everyone knows it. Well, again, Nirbang, how often do we have to say this? The whole concept of Khalistan has its roots all the way back to the Sikh Empire of the 19th century. Where was Pakistan in the 19th century? It wasn't even a twinkle in the eye of the British Empire. It did not exist. It only arrived in 1947. So it is unlikely that the Khalistan movement is a Pakistani project. However, that is not to say that Pakistan would support the concept of Khalistan. That is a very different argument, James, is it not?
Absolutely, yeah. It's two totally different sides of a coin, and we need to look at the benefits to India, to Pakistan, to the entire region should Khalistan come to fruition. But again, it doesn't mean that Pakistan is necessarily going to want that at their doorstep on their border. So again, we just it is not a Khalistani movement, and it's not, it's not a Pakistan movement. It is a Khalistani movement. So it's important to keep the differentiation there because two totally different polarized parts. So.
Yeah, and of course, this whole situation of that Pahalgam massacre has of course brought into the public debate now the relationship between Khalistan and Pakistan, and 5AAB does send out a word of warning. So look, just be a bit careful with Pakistan because, of course, Pakistan will be concerned because Sikhs do see Lahore and places like the various Gurdwaras like Kartarpur Sahib in Khalistan, Nankana Sahib. These are places that are very important to Khalistanis, and of course there is a potential that Khalistanis will say to Pakistan, look, we want those as part of Khalistan as well, which of course Pakistan would resist. But 5AAB does believe actually that Pakistan is just playing a bit of a psychological game with the Sikhs, saying, yes, you can come and go to these holy sites. But if you look at the wars between Pakistan and India, particularly the Hindustanis, it's the Sikhs that 5AAB claims that have always blocked the Pakistan army's way into Hindustan. But what your call here, and actually reflects very much what Gurpratap Singh Pannoon is actually saying, is that the Sikhs should actually refuse to fight for the Hindustanis. Because ultimately, as we well know, James, India has treated its Sikh community with absolute disgrace, despite everything that the Sikhs have done for India as a whole. Many more Sikhs have died in proportion for the cause of India than any other nation. And certainly how many Gujaratis, for example, have died for India? Not that many. In fact, probably none at all. But many, hundreds of thousands of Sikhs have died in India's cause. As 5AAB says, let the brave Hindustanis fight their own battles, James.
Yeah, and I think that people really have to keep in mind that it is an international battle when we look at human rights, when we look at the global impact of human rights abuses of minorities, and the cost to the geopolitical spectrum in terms of instability within regions. So it does impact the whole world. And people say, oh, well, it's their problem, but it's not. It's a global issue, and it impacts all of us in one way or another, Angus.
Indeed it does. And the final comment on that lot is from Mohammed Shakur, who says, and this it sends out basically the hand of friendship, says, look, long live Pakistan and Khalistan friendship. Indeed, it is a complex set of dynamics between Pakistan and Khalistan and, of course, India in that whole mix. And of course, the causes do align to some degree. But ultimately, if the hand of friendship is reached across, then you certainly can't push that back. So Hat B says, thanks, Angus and James, for the great programme. India's trying so hard to try and make the world think that they respect Sikhs. Absolutely. They say one thing, but in reality, we all know the truth. Indian mouthpieces have been putting out this narrative that, and this turns to the Kohinoor diamond, and this is about the riches that the British Raj took from the Indian subcontinent. And particularly from the Sikh Empire, and you specifically named the Kohinoor diamond. Well, ultimately, what you're saying is that India is demanding all these riches back, particularly the Kohinoor diamond, because they know that the Khalistan movement is rising, and the Khalistan itself will have a claim on that massive diamond. I have to say, I saw that diamond myself last summer in London, and it's quite a diamond. It's about the size of my fist. But ultimately, the history of the Kohinoor diamond is very interesting. But Khalistan has a claim on the Kohinoor diamond, but of course India realises that, and India doesn't want Khalistan getting their hands on it, as well as all the other riches. So India suddenly now are panicking, thinking, no, we need to get these back from the UK before Khalistan can get their hands on it, James. It's this dirty business of grabbing money and jewels, James. Nothing ever changes, does it?
Absolutely, and that belongs to, that should go to the Sikhs, and plain and simple, that's the way it is. And look at the bright side is that, Narendra Modi is so worried about the Khalistan movement succeeding that, his sphincter is so tight they can just stick some coal up his ass and he'll shit them out a new diamond.
One hopes it's not the size of the Kohinoor, otherwise it'll bring tears to his eyes. Balfinderjit Nagy. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre was organised by Hindu Congress, who then disappeared from the protests. Who suffered the most? Yes, the Sikhs. Unfortunately, once again, it is the Congress setting it up and then basically running away. Who suffered as a result? It was the Sikhs. So once again, it is the Congress beating down on the Sikh community. How true. Now, a quick return, James, to Critics' Corner. VMM says, keep your propaganda. Well, James, my message back to VM is thank you very much. We won't just keep it, we'll keep broadcasting it on behalf of the nation of Khalistan, James.
But let's get some logic into this, Angus. If we kept it to ourselves, it wouldn't really be propaganda because it wouldn't be public, right?
Absolutely right. We love it. We love a logical argument. So VM, thank you for your comment. And indeed, we will indeed keep our propaganda, but we'll keep it very much in the public domain. But sadly, it is blocked in India. What does that say to you, Mr. VM or Miss VM, whoever you may be? If it wasn't so offensive, then why would India block it? So clearly they are scared, unfortunately. And final set of comments, Amakara. Yes, Amakara.
Scroll button that, that they can keep going.
Absolutely. Amakara tried to comment on Bob Blackman, that's the British MP, the Hindutva-inspired British MP. And Amakara tried to comment on Bob Blackman's X account, calling, because he was claiming that Khalistanis were terrorists for protesting against the emergency movie. He then got blocked. James, this is not freedom of speech when a British MP blocks somebody who dares call him out for something that he doesn't like.
Oh my goodness, can you imagine censorship in this day and age? It would never happen by government, would it?
What on earth is Mr. Blackman afraid of, one has to ask? Well, all I would say, Amakara, is keep at it, keep going, keep verbally attacking these dreadful MPs who are basically afraid of the truth, who are basically afraid to actually stand up and call out the truth. It says an awful lot about the individual himself. So let's hope that reflects badly on Mr. Blackman. And Hardal Singh. Thanks, James and Angus, for the programme. Proud to see you guys, the Truth News. Absolutely, we do try our best to bring the truth, James, do we not? And as I say every time in our comments column, we couldn't do this show without our wonderful commenters contributing so much.
Absolutely. And we really appreciate all of the comments, good and negative. So just keep them coming. We got thick skin. We love the comments regardless. So, but thank you for your support.
And indeed, the final word goes to D Daddy, who is based in Punjab, Patiala. Lots of love and support to both you. Well, all I would say to you, sir, is we send the absolute same back to you guys in the Punjab, and for those of you listening in India, that we know there is only a few of you, but do tell as many people as you can. Get on VPNs, change your YouTube settings to a different country, which apparently allows you to get access to our channel. So spread the word, and a big hello to all of our audience in India, particularly those in Punjab. We are there with you. We are fighting the battle on your behalf, democratically, peacefully, but we are doing our best. But we can only do it if you spread the word, get more people across the Punjab and across India to tune in to our show. But thank you very much for your support. And as I say, our thoughts are always with you and our support is always there. But James, on that note, we must bring things to a close once again for Perspectives. Please don't forget to keep your comments coming in. Thanks for all your comments that have been pouring in. Very much appreciated. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention directly. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching as always. You have been watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.